John McMullen joins us every day at this time. We talk NFL. NFL news and notes brought to you by Boardwalk, by BMW of Atlantic City. The ultimate driving experience is closer than you think at BMWofAtlanticCity.com off exit 37 on the Garden State Parkway, which is where I hope everybody is parked right now, or maybe the expressway if you're coming from Philly. John McMullen, hopefully you are not sitting in traffic, my friend.
No, I'm glad I'm not at 7S on the expressway because I'm sure that's backed up.
Probably not fun, 7S right now. For all the people who may be driving down, Eagles fans, give us a little overview in your mind of the 3-day OTAs and just some of the things that stood out, some of the things that maybe Doug said, some of the competitions, a little overview for the Eagle fans out there who are heading down this way of the first couple days of OTAs.
Well, I always, harken back to what Bill Belichick described the offseason of the NFL, and he always said OTAs and mini camp are for teaching, and training camp is for evaluation. So to me, these are the first days to sort of put together the 2017 Eagles, and it's much more meaningful for the younger players, obviously. So I'm not too concerned about the veterans who didn't show up, and it's just the first step of many, and I think there's no question offensively this team has added significant talent around Carson Wentz. So I think when we look at it from that standpoint, is can they hold up from the depth aspect on the defensive side of the football? If they can, and stay relatively healthy, I think this is going to be an improved football team.
And really, that's what the offseason's about. Did you get better? Did you take steps to improve? I know Bill Polian, he's somebody who really likes what the Eagles have done in this offseason. And I'll play a clip for you guys. This is something in terms of which team had the best offseason. Take a listen.
Mine is the Philadelphia Eagles. Added Alshon Jeffrey to the receiving core. Torrey Smith to the receiving core gives him a downfield speed option they didn't have before. And LeGarrette Blount in the running game.
Absolutely.
16 touchdowns last year for New England, converting 3rd and 1s. That's a big weapon. And on defense, Chris Long and Patrick Robinson, and then the young man they drafted from the University of Washington in the secondary, Sidney Jones, is going to be a big addition, too, once he gets over an injury. So a good year for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, John. Best offseason. Bill Polian picks the Eagles. Too much?
Well, I think the Eagles themselves will kind of tell you they're a little tired of winning off seasons because this wouldn't be the first that people claim they won, and it doesn't mean much. But look, I don't think it's a bad thing when people who understand football around the league say you did a good job in improving your football team. That's the goal. That's what you want to do. And from an offensive perspective, the bottom line is you have Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, LeGarrette Blount, as Bill mentioned there, replacing Nelson Agholor, Dorial Green, Beckham, and Ryan Matthews. So that's an improvement. There's just no other way to look at that. Defensively, I'm not quite as high on the people they've added, not the rookies per se. I think Sidney Jones will be a very good draft choice when he's healthy. But you look at the cornerback position specifically before Jones is 100%, and you look at it and say, who's going to step up? Patrick Robinson has been around long enough to say you can't count on him. Let's be honest. And so we're counting on a second-year player in Jalen Mills and a third-round draft choice in Rasul Douglas. And that, to me, remains the biggest concern.
John McMullen with us. Two things for you, John. One, when we were all at the draft together, you, me, and Mike Gill up there doing our show, I saw Jeffrey Lurie made an appearance in our area, and he was going to meet Bill Polian, like they had a little conversation together. So maybe Lurie paid Polian to say all those good comments. That's the theory, right?
Yeah, well, it's an old boys club, the NFL as a whole. So I don't think he would have had to give him much. But Bill's in the Hall of Fame, so he knows what he's talking about, and he'll also tell you he would have made Tom Brady a first-round pick. So I'm not sure you can take everything.
But he already had Peyton Manning on his team. He already had Peyton Manning. He didn't need Tom Brady.
He would have took a boat, though, if he had the opportunity.
Hindsight being 2020.
Yeah. So, I mean, you take it for what it is. And, again, I mean, the Eagles once won the offseason with the Dream Team, and that didn't work out too well. So it's not about winning off seasons. It's about winning when September comes around. And I think, as I said when I started, I think from a talent standpoint, this is an improved team, and that's all you can ask for.
John, you mentioned Nelson Agholor a minute ago, and I saw an interesting take on social media about Nelson Agholor. A lot of people who are ready to write him off, and he's just a bust, and they want to release him. And, of course, we know the narrative of you can't release him because it would cost more to release him than it is to keep him. Do you ever use Brandon Graham as an example of, like, a bust that actually can turn around and turn into something? Can Nelson Agholor be saved? Can he be like Brandon Graham and a guy that goes from bust to success story?
Yeah, he could. I mean, because Brandon was a very late bloomer and turned into an all-pro player last season. So it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen here, though. And I mentioned earlier in the week to you guys, Nelson Agholor, I thought, was one of the most impressive players at OTAs on Tuesday. He looked very, very good. But you have to look at the landscape, and you have to look at the reality. Outside of an injury, he's not going to get the opportunity because he's buried on the depth chart. At best, the fourth receiver on this team. And he's just not going to get enough opportunities to catch the football to change that narrative around. Could he move on to another city after this season and be a later bloomer? Yeah, of course. He's got talent. To me, it's always been a mental thing with Nelson, and the fact that he just lost confidence, and he kind of admitted to that after the Seattle game last year.
John, of course, everything runs through Carson Wentz, and that's like the North Star when you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. That's your constant. That's how you guide the ships and everything. But with that said, Nick Foles is back as his backup. Did you get a chance to talk to Nick Foles at all? Did you get a chance to listen to any of his comments? And I wonder what your impression of Nick Foles 2.0. How will he help Carson Wentz maybe?
Well, I think he fits in nicely as a backup quarterback. I think that's all you could ask for of a backup, a guy who has extensive starting experience, who understands how to play and prepare in this league. He's not going to create waves. If you have some hiccups, he understands his role. And he could step in and play the same offense that Doug Peterson wants to play. So that's everything you want in a backup quarterback. I think it's interesting, though, and I asked Carson about this, is the fact that the entire quarterback room has changed except for Carson Wentz. And if you think about where we were last year and how much money the Eagles had tied up in the quarterback position with Sam Bradford and Chase Daniel, and those guys are gone. And now Carson's leading that room with Nick Foles and Matt McMullen. So it's been a pretty drastic turnover in a 365-day period.
Yeah, we're talking with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the league nationally, FanRag Sports NFL at JF McMullen on Twitter. And, one thing, you guys talked about Agholor, and you wonder, Coach Doug Peterson said he saw improvement. He said, quote, as I said all along, competition, it sharpens you. But realistically, could he overtake? I mean, would the Eagles say, hey, Nelson Agholor beat out Torrey Smith and he's going to play? Like, do you see that scenario happening? Even if you guys are watching and say, man, Nelson's having a good camp. He looks like he's outplaying Torrey Smith. Do you legitimately see him getting a fair opportunity to get on the field?
I think that is a possibility, but we're talking maybe 10-15% possibility. I mean, I keep going back to last season, and Torrey was bad, and he was on a bad team, but his film was bad, and that's a concern. And there's an opportunity. If you would have asked me if Ruben Randall was going to get cut last year at this time, I would have said, you're crazy, and he got cut. And there weren't exactly great receivers around Ruben Randall. So, yeah, it's a possibility. The Eagles don't have much invested in Torrey Smith, and if he goes out there in August and completely lays an egg, yeah, they could easily move on from him. But I looked at the role he's supposed to fill as the deep threat, and I would think if he does get cut, it's because the Eagles think Mac Hollins or Shelton Gibson can contribute right away. I don't think Nelson would be the guy taking his job.
John, because you brought up Chase Daniel a minute ago, that made me think of something about his size. Chase Daniel was barely 6 feet tall. Nick Foles, 6'6". Carson Wentz, 6'5". I don't know if you ever seen the movie Heaven Can Wait when Warren Beatty says he's not tall enough. He won't see over the line. But, you know, is there an importance to having a backup quarterback who's sort of the similar size and arm skills, or do you not put value in that?
No, I think it's more important to have somebody with a similar skill set, and I think that's where it comes in. It could be Drew Brees at 6 feet and is a true pocket passer. It's obviously more difficult for guys who are shorter to see over the line of scrimmage, and there's far more misses than hits when you're that size, and that's why generally the prototypical pocket style passer is going to be 6'4", 6'5", somewhere in that range. So, but as far as a backup goes, it's more important. You don't have to be similar physically, but you have to be able to run the same offense because that's what coaches want. They don't want to have to change their entire offense in a week if somebody sprains their ankle. So that's why you don't see teams like Philadelphia, for instance, going after Colin Kaepernick, because they don't want to play that type of offense. And that's why a guy like that has difficulty getting a job.
All right, John, let's get into some quick NFL news and notes. ESPN.com has been doing a little piece on the offseason. I want to get your take on some of their questions because I thought some of these were interesting. Which team, in your mind, improved itself the most? We just told you what Polian said. He thought it was the Eagles. Now, of their writers, the Eagles did not come up. You had Tampa Bay, Cleveland, another Tampa Bay, another Cleveland, the Colts, the Rams. Who's the top of the list for you?
Well, I think, to me, I throw Cleveland out because they're at such a low bar. Of course, they're improved, but it's easy to improve when you've hit rock bottom. I think Tampa Bay was a team I thought was ready to make a run at a wild card spot last season. Didn't shake out that way, and now they've added Deshaun Jackson as a speed threat opposite Mike Evans, and then O.J. Howard as a tight end. That's a lot of talent around Jameis Winston, and they have a potential to do some special things on offense.
Who had the worst offseason? Which team got measurably worse? I was surprised to see multiple of their writers went with Washington.
Well, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think everybody looks at that they lost Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon and says, oh, they got much worse. But those are aging players. That's what you do in the NFL. And they have some younger receivers. They signed Terrell Pryor. So that might shake out very, very differently. People, as I say, often get enamored with big names, and Jackson and Garçon are big names. And I do think Jackson's a good fit in Tampa because of who's on the opposite side of him. But I'll also tell you, he's a descending player. So if you're Washington and you don't have a Mike Evans on the other side, you think differently. So I don't necessarily agree with that kind of thinking.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. He covers the Eagles for us, and, of course, his national coverage at FanRag Sports NFL at JF McMullen. Eagles back at OTAs on Tuesday, and John will be there covering it all for us. Check out the website, 97.3 ESPN.com, for all your Eagles news and notes. John, have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend, pal.
Hey, you too, guys. Enjoy it.